Well, hello and welcome to Bowtie Life, where we talk mostly about life in the garden. And today, well, we live in, I'm Bowtie David, live in Destin, Florida, now Zone 9B, but just a few blocks that way is Zone 9A. If you don't know what that means just yet, don't worry about it. It's kind of irrelevant for what we're talking about in most of my videos. Not sure why I put that in anyway. Today we are going to talk about a very basic recipe on making seed starting soil. And I do a little bit different than a lot of people do, and we'll get into the differences that I do and why I do it. There's a lot to do with why. In upcoming videos we are going to start planting some seeds, getting ready for the spring planting of 2024. It's very exciting. This is like the day it starts, and I'm very happy to be here. Be sure to subscribe to Bowtie Life on YouTube so you don't miss a thing. Our videos come out here on YouTube first, so you can get your information earlier this way. For those of you who have subscribed, you are my heroes and you've helped make Bowtie Life what it is today. Thank you. Hi, I'm Bowtie Dave. So this is a series of videos that I'm recording this weekend for seed starting for the year. I like doing this because gives me information I can look back to in future dates and figure out what I did when I did it. And so this becomes my personal vlog of what's going on in the garden. In the first part of this, we talked about some very basic information and rules, and the only rule for gardening that you really need to know before getting started. I did mention in that video that I kill a lot of plants, and when you become a gardener, you kill more plants than you ever did not being a gardener. So don't be afraid to kill some plants, because I guarantee you will. These turned out to be just extras that didn't get out in the garden, and it's okay. So we're going to talk about seed starting soil. Now, two things here to keep in mind with this video. Number one, I'm a cheapskate. I don't like wasting money, I don't like wasting food, I don't like wasting soil, I don't like wasting things. And I have a tendency to keep things around as long as they're useful, and sometimes beyond their usefulness if you ask Mrs. Bowtie. That's another story, but I do like to spend as little as possible on my seed starting. It means that sometimes I may not get 100% germination on my seeds that I plant. But you know what I do instead? I'll plant a few extra and make up for it. And so I always have a few extra plants that I didn't need because I planted a few extra. And you know what it cost me? Not much. So I don't think you could measure it in pennies, to be honest. So anyway, that's the kind of things that you start off with in your head as you're looking at seed starting. Now I have here, this is actually the tub that I have used for the past year to keep my soil in. There is a lid for this somewhere over there, and I'm not sure where, but the soil that's in here has been in here for a while. There is soil. In fact, one of the things that I use is I use this cheap Stay Green potting mix from my local Lowe's. I don't think Stay Green is anything particularly important. The one reason why I like Stay Green is because it's very consistent, and that's one of the biggest things that I looked for about 4 years ago when I started deciding what soil I was going to be using from then on. And one of the biggest things was consistency. Some of the brands that I got, I would open up one bag and it was perfect. It was beautiful, lots of organic material the way it's supposed to be. And then I'd open up the next one, it was half sand, which isn't a terrible thing, but I needed the consistency for this particular project. Sand is not a great thing to plant my seed starts in. It's It's also not a great thing to plant some other things in. So I didn't buy that brand anymore. I went to another. I went to some pretty high dollar bags, and they were actually really good, but they were high dollar. And I really hated to spend that much money on some of those. You know, you can pay 50 bucks for some more expensive potting mixes that just blows my brain. It hurts my head, to be honest. And so I use the Stay Green potting mix. I think it's about $7 a bag. I'm sorry. This stuff I think is $9 for a big bag. And I've been using this for a number of years now, and I actually have not had any problem with it. The cool thing is, every single bag that I get is consistent. It's the exact same amount of organic material and soil in there that just makes for healthy growing. And you can see in there, there is some woody material in there. Occasionally you end up with a stick or a larger hunk of wood, and I'm just kind of feeling around here. I don't see anything very large right now, but it's pretty fine, and that's what I like about this. Now, one thing you can do, I do on occasion need a finer soil for particular seedlings that are a little bit more persnickety. And so what I will do is I will borrow Mrs. Bowtie's steamer liner from the kitchen, and I will just sift some of this stuff. And I'm just going to do it right here on the table. And you can see here pretty quick, I'm coming up with a much finer soil than I did just straight out of the bag. And with this, I can grow even finer seeds. I like doing my onions this way on occasion, though I don't always do it because I forget. So anyway, there's different ways you can do this, and that's one of the big things to remember. Your way, you may find a way that's different from everybody else's way. If it works for you, it don't matter. Don't get hung up on importance and only supposed to be done this way and all these other things that really don't matter when it comes to gardening. The way God made seeds and plants, He made them to want to grow. It's actually very easy to get them to grow. And it's part of His gift to us. One of the, well, I'm not going to get into that. Anyway, I will, in fact, here are some old seed starts that I used last year, and I will actually recycle the soil. Now, this soil has been dry, so a lot of the stuff that might be in here, which there really wasn't because they were sitting indoors, a lot of the stuff that was in there is dead or dormant, which is okay. There's a lot of biome in this soil. In fact, in this little handful right here, there's billions of different organisms and millions of different types of organisms, bacteria and fungus and various things that are important for the life of the soil. And truth of the matter is, you're not going to get healthy, sterilized soil. The fact that it's exposed to the air, there's stuff floating around in the air. The human body itself has more non-human blood cells than human cells in it, and that is because of the biome that we need for our body to survive. Our whole intestinal system is lined with it. There's biome all through our body that helps us to live and live healthy. And so we want that diverse life that we can get in the soil. I get a lot of my compost that's out in the gardens from a horse equestrian center that they recycle their horse bedding into compost, and you can go get that compost for free. I love it because it's just this beautiful diverse biome that I would not otherwise have, and I grow things in it, a lot of things, a lot of healthy things. In fact, the big compost day video, there was quite a discussion on there about using horse compost in your garden, and one of the biggest tests that you can run on the safety of using a compost is to grow beans. And there is actually a video of me sitting in front of a huge bean wall that has grown from this horse bedding compost. Very healthy, very just fine. And so look for that biome diversity. I will actually be recycling all these now that I'll pull out the plant. but you can see they're very dry. It's going to be important here in just a minute. There's the plant. You know what I'm going to do with that? I'm going to go outside and throw it in the compost, and that will be composted for next year. By next year, this will have turned into beautiful organic material for the garden. But if I dump out the rest of this stuff, it is the exact same potting material that I got out of one of these stay green bags. In fact, I happen to know where this came from. It may have actually come from this exact same bag, but it's dry. And so that's going to be one of the big things that you're going to have to deal with first. So the organic material in here, when it gets dry, it gets what's called hydrophobic. Hydrophobic means it's afraid of the water. I'm hydrophobic, or I was hydrophobic when I was young, and yeah, it doesn't take on water. And we want soil that can hold water. Now there's a lot of organic material in this soil, a lot. One of the reasons why I like this particular brand. But that organic material can hold water eventually. It has to soak though. And so I actually have a watering can over here, and I'm going to get a few more scoops of this out of here. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take the camera off the tripod for just a few minutes, and we're going to look inside here and watch the water as it goes into this soil. So you can see the material. Now that leaf right there, that was probably from some recycled, it's one of our oak trees out here. But when I start pouring this water in, you'll notice that it doesn't really soak in. It just kind of sits there. And it takes a few minutes before it even starts doing anything, but this stuff on the very top here is still dry. In fact, if I sit here and even stir it in briskly, eventually I can get it to go in. A lot of work to be done. Oh, there's an old Fatale pepper. Don't need that in there. It's got seeds in it, but a little bit of work. Get this, and now suddenly there's a little bit more soil being held within that organic material. Not a lot, certainly not enough. And so you got to kind of give your soil a little bit of time to soak in the water. And I poured a lot in there. I poured about a half a gallon of water in there for this little amount of soil. But look, you can see it's this puddle. There's this puddle of water right here. And that will just take time to soak in. So when we start getting this stuff moistened for the first time, especially this bag of stuff, because it's been sitting here in the Florida room, and it's gotten a bit dry, which is not unusual. So first things first, we got to get our soil moist. Now realize this tub, I used one of these tubs for most of last fall's seed starting. I will use probably 2 of these tubs for this spring's seed starting, as there is more seeds to start. This bag of soil I purchased spring of last year. Summer of last year. And I purchased a few of them, 2 or 3, and that's all I purchased. I haven't used a lot of these bags of soil. I simply don't use a lot of these bags of soil. But you can see there, it's the same organic type stuff. There's a lot of shredded, partially composted stuff in there. And I'm going to go ahead and pour the rest of this 1.25 gallons in here. Probably plus about half that much more. And you can see there, it is literally just sitting there, not even soaking in. It does take a while. Sometimes it takes 20 minutes. Sometimes it takes an hour. You can help it soak in. I have a couple of serving spoons here that I'll use to stir it in occasionally if I'm feeling like I need to get this done. Eventually it will soak in, and once it soaks in, the soil has a much easier time holding that moisture, which is where watering comes in and keeping it consistently slightly moist. But you can see now, a few drops come out, it kind of holds together. It's not quite soaked, but it's getting there. So moisture is one thing that you want in this soil, but on the opposite side of that, you don't want too much. Now I've put about 1.5 gallons in here in this tub, and this will eventually all soak in. In fact, I can feel in the bottom down there. Well, see, there's still some dry stuff I'm pulling out of the bottom where this water is settling down to. But I can feel it's also starting to really soak in, which is what we're looking for. And eventually we'll have a good amount of water in here. But how do we get it from being too much water? Well, I'm just dumping it in here, and there's no holes in this thing. If there were drainage holes in this tub, number one, I'd have a mess on the table I grew up with, which that's what this is underneath here. This is the table I ate breakfast at as a child, but I don't want to mess it up that much, so we don't use a tub that has holes in it. But now we're starting to get some good water in here. A way to keep it from being too much water is to start adding some kind of medium in here that will drain real good. And we have a very useful material. It is a byproduct of volcanic something or other. It is called perlite. Perlite. P-E-R-L-I-T. This is just a brand I got at a local store. This is actually a small bag. My first bag was actually as big as this, and it lasted me almost 4 years. So it doesn't take a ton of this stuff, but you've seen it. It's the stuff that comes in the plants that you get at the store. It looks like styrofoam. Well, it's not styrofoam. It's volcanic rock that's been reacted with heat and popped like popcorn. Now, some of this stuff does have asbestos in it. I hope this is the asbestos free. Now that I say it, most of the times it's okay. It's OMRI listed, and I cannot see. It's probably. It makes a lot of dust, though. Let me get to my point before I choke here. It does make a lot of dust, and so it's good to keep this low. You might want to wear a mask if you're especially disturbed by dust. I probably should have, as dusty as that got. But you'll need to see, just as soon as I stir it in, the dust will be reduced tremendously. So perlite actually helps in two very interesting things. Number one, it helps drain the soil so it doesn't have too much water in it. But on the opposite side of that, it also holds a little bit of water to help keep the soil moist, which is very peculiar because it kind of does the two opposite things, but it does it so well. We use this a lot in plants. And yes, you will see this all over. You go to any garden center, look at the soil that the plants are growing in, and you will see perlite in there. Now, I have seen places where people actually use styrofoam in their soil. Never in a nursery. And it was a homeowner had poured a whole bunch of styrofoam, those little pellets, into their garden, thinking it was going to do a good job, and really, you're just poisoning the bed. So don't do that. This is not styrofoam. This is a organic, environmentally safe product. But now, you can probably see here on camera, it's getting a little clumpy. It's starting to look better. And if I pick up a handful of this, the ideal is that when I squeeze this, you might see a few drops of water come out, but that's it. And I go like this, it's not a stream. You see how that's just a few drops of water come out, and then look, it holds together, but it very easily falls apart. This right here is a good consistency for almost any kind of plant. And so that's what I am looking for right there. I'm Gonna let this sit a little bit, let that moisture soak into all the material here so it's nice and consistent. There's still a few dry spots down at the bottom here. In fact, I haven't gotten to this corner yet. So to see how there's not as much perlite right there. But I will go around here and dig out the bottom several times all the way around to make sure I get everything mixed in. Oh, there's a dry spot right there. Look at that. Dry on the bottom. It's all dry. So I particularly will sit here and dig around the corners all the way around. Do that a couple times. Dig up the middle. Anyway, so getting that consistently moist is very important. Perlite, it's not a requirement. I think it helps for my garden. It's not very expensive. One of the big things here, folks, though, is don't get tied up in the thing that I say. Try it without perlite if you want to. I did it without, in fact, I've done it without perlite a lot of times, and it works fine. There's the other things you can do. Another thing you can do is vermiculite. Now vermiculite's a little different. Again, it's a naturally occurring compound. You can see here, see that little piece right there? It squeezes like styrofoam. It will actually soak up water and hold water in the soil and let it out slowly into the soil. It's just another product that you can use. Here's another big piece. It looks like a solid, oh, where'd it go? There it is. Solid hunk, and I can actually just squeeze that flat. But that will soak up water and hold water in the soil. Now I've used vermiculite. I like, for this particular purpose, I like the perlite a little better for mixing in. Some people will use perlite or vermiculite over the top of their seeds. I've tried that. I haven't had a lot of success with that for me. Now, folks, this is where the whole thing, for me, becomes important, because there will be people who tell you you need to have perfectly sterile soil. Well, as sterile as this is in the bag, because, well, number one, another thing you don't want, we're talking about too much moisture you don't want. Well, another thing you don't want is you don't want the insects that turn into flying things like gnats and flies in your soil. This stuff here should be fairly safe. I've not had any trouble with this particular brand. We bring our seed starts indoors. Even though we use what I consider to be good soil to use for this, we still have some gnats in the house. I still put up fly strips. It still happens. Folks, we're not conquering nature, we're working with nature. And that's how you have to approach this. Yes, you might have a fly or two, a gnat or two indoors. Put up some fly strips. Put up the little yellow cards that you can get on Amazon to stick down in your plants. It'll catch those gnats. We work with nature. We don't try to poison it to death. And so be careful about just pulling in. I would never pull in soil from my compost bin out there that does have flies and nasties of all kinds in it. I don't want that inside in my seed starts. Another reason, not only just because I don't want the pests inside, some of those will be eating my seeds and my seedlings and be killing the things that I'm trying to grow, and we don't want that. So we do want to control it and ease it into the direction that we need it to go. So to encourage you not to just go out into your yard and just get soil that's been outside. You can do it though. And if that's the way you need to go, what you can do is you can stick a whole bunch of soil into a large roasting pan, and you can stick it in the oven. It's very easy to look up online what the temperature, it's a certain temperature for a certain amount of time in the oven, so it all gets hot to a certain temperature, and it will be safe for indoor use. I've done that too. So you can do either way. This is not the only way to do it, folks. Experiment. I encourage it, and find your way. all I'm doing is trying to give you another idea to all the other videos that you've seen. So, insects. So we've talked about the soil, the mixture, the extra ingredient, the perlite that I put in here, and trying to keep the bugs out. And so now the final thing that I want to talk about is what I put into here for fertilizer. Now folks, I will be the first to tell you, your seeds do not need fertilizer to germinate. Simply put, they do not. You can put your seed into sterile soil with 0 nutrients and they will germinate. If that doesn't tell you that God made them to want to grow, I don't know what will. And a lot of people grow it that way. One of my biggest challenges is that when I grow something, occasionally my ADD brain forgets about it. And I want to have the peace of mind that I can walk away from that and know that when my ADD brain decides to come back around to it, it's going to be okay. What that occasionally means is that a plant may have to stay in the soil for an extra amount of time before I decide to get back around to it. It happens to me, folks. I learn to work with what I do, and I learn to make adjustments to what I need. So one of the things that I do is I will actually plant things in solo cups rather than seed starting trays. And we'll talk more about these here in the next video. We're going to start talking about putting seeds in the soil. But reason why I will put it in here is I know it has enough soil in here to grow. And what I will do is I will put a little bit of basic food inside the soil to give it just the start that it needs. In case I forget, it's got something to start working on. So sitting here holding that bag, I realized I had the wrong stuff out. I do use this, but something later. And incidentally, folks, this is not a sponsored video. This is just the stuff that I found to be useful. And we're going to talk a little bit about nutrients, and all the time, whenever you buy fertilizers, you're going to see a set of 3 numbers. This 4, 6, 3. On this organic tomato tone, it's on the back. It is 3, 4, 6. So these things mean different things. Also, you'll find it on your potting soil. 0.1, 0.08, 0.06. We're going to talk about that in another video. We actually have another video where I explained the nutrients, and I want to do that again today, but I'm not going to get too far into exactly what those mean right now, because what I want to do here is I want to show you what I do and tell you why I do it. I will put a small amount, and I say small amount, they have instructions on how to include with so much soil. I'll typically cut that about in half and mix it in really good. What that does for me is when I put the seed in the soil, when I put the seed in the little cup of soil and sit there and water it on rare occasion and I forget about it, number one, this cup is large enough to hold a significant amount of water in reserve. So if I forget about it for a week, it's probably not going to kill it. Okay? If I forget about it for a week, a few times in a row before I actually decide to get a little seed start up in a larger cup, it's got some food to work with and it can grow some. Now this plant here, this had grown. This is a pretty good sized plant when it eventually gave up the ghost, but it had some of the basic fertilizer in there to get going. You can also add other fertilizers in there. One of my favorites is fish emulsion. And yes, that's exactly what it sounds like. It's ground up fermented fish. Ew, yeah, smells nasty. We'll talk about that at another time. But what I'm going to do here is I will take this, and again, this is not sponsored. I like this particular stuff because it's available to me. You can find what you have available to you. And I'm looking for my cup that has no hole in it. Because we're going to scoop out a significant amount of this. And this is organic. Means there's no chemicals in there. It's not going to burn the roots of little seedlings that are very susceptible to such things. So I will pour that in and I will mix that in really good, just like I did the perlite, just like I did the water. And we will have a decent mix for my purposes for seed starting. A mix that will feed the basic plants when I forget to water them and up pot them. Maybe I don't forget. Maybe I just run out of time. I'm working on a big project right now and I got another project coming right up. I'm not going to have a lot of time for the next few weeks. So in about 2 or 3 weeks when these are ready to get potted up, I'm not going to have to worry about them. So I put a little extra food in there so that they have something to work with. And you can adjust. I've said it before, I'll say it again. God made these things want to grow. It is His gift to us as His creation. And if we learn to work with that, it seems like magic. I'm going to put a little bit more in here. I'm missing some in the corners. And set that aside. So we get this good and incorporated all through here, and then we have, in my opinion, and for my garden, the soil that is going to best suit my needs. Got a little bit of food in it. It's got a little bit of perlite in it for drainage. Make sure things don't get too wet and drown. But there's still enough in there for capillary action to soak up the water. And we'll be talking about all that in one of the next videos. So we now have a big old pot, a big old tub of seed starting soil that I'm happy with. So thank you for following along today. For those of you who have subscribed, I thank you very much for subscribing to Bowtie Life on YouTube. You are my heroes and you helped grow the channel to what it is now. And I just am very thankful for you being here. We are trying to grow our channel to the next level. And once we reach that point, there's going to be more that we can do with this channel, and that makes me very excited. For those of you just finding our channel, Bowtie Life on YouTube, this is my own personal journal of everything going on in the garden. With my ADD brain, I've tried journaling in a book, I've tried photography, I've tried doing computer programs, and I just hadn't found anything that works for me until I started making videos and posting it on my YouTube channel. One of the biggest things that this does for me is I can go back and look at the videos and play them as I'm doing other stuff around the house, and they remind me of things that I have to do in a way that nothing else ever has. And that excites me because I remember to do things, I get more done than I would otherwise. So be sure to subscribe to Bowtie Life on YouTube so you don't miss a thing as we document everything going on in the garden. Also, another way you can help grow the channel is click the thumbs up on this video if you thought it was useful. And share it on your social media pages with friends that may be looking at starting their own garden and starting their own seeds for their garden and have their own fresh produce. It's exciting to me to be able to encourage people. If you don't do this exact recipe, which you saw, I didn't have anything exact. I just kind of, that feels good. If it inspires you to get started, that's awesome. Let me know in the comments below. Y'all have a blessed day.